Howdy, folks, and welcome to YouTube Roulette, the show where we pick a YouTube-generated music genre playlist, ask Alexa for a random number, then use that to find tracks that'll expand our horizons. My name's Cary Nightingale, and with me as always is my trusty sidekick, Kevin Nebrich. Kevo, how you doing?
Happy to be here, sir. How are you feeling?
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. I would love for you to tell me about the indie genre song that you landed on.
Happy to, sir. So Substitution is the second single off of Silversun Pickup's second studio album, Swoon. Lots of S words in that statement. I found this song to be well composed, and I gave it a higher rhythm score due to the complementary nature of all its overlapping rhythms. The lyrics are open to interpretation, but offer some interesting imagery and fun turns of phrase. I particularly enjoyed the chorus in this song, especially the juxtaposition of the two lines that follow. But then it wasn't enough, and now enough is too much. Brilliant. This song was both well performed and well produced, and I really enjoyed the call and response between the vocals and the synth in the bridge. And finally, I still don't know what they're talking about. The narrator sounds as if they are empathizing with the listener, but are they alluding to being in the limelight? Abuse, addiction, take your pick. This song could be a cathartic track for anyone suffering hardship or difficulty of any kind. I hear a supportive message encouraging de-escalation, but that's just me. I gave Substitution by Silversun Pickups a tune score of 8.1 out of 10. But Cary, will you listen to this song and tell me if I got the tune score right? And then more importantly to me, tell me what you think it's about.
Well, I'll certainly give it the old college try. Give me just a moment and I'll be back after I've given it a spin. Okay, Kev, I'm back, and I gave Substitutions a quick tune score without putting a whole lot of notes together, just for sake of comparison, because you said you rated it an 8.1 out of 10. And my impression was that this is not that high quality, complex, or appealing of a song to warrant that kind of a rating. I landed at a 7.1. And I think maybe we should go section by section and just compare notes. And I'm not asking you to defend or really justify your ratings. It's your ratings. But let's kind of have a little bit of a conversation about it before we move on into the song that I landed on for YouTube Roulette.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, so for the composition section, I rated that at a 2.9. The lyrics are essentially meaningless based on my very rapid attempt at an interpretation. The closest thing I can get from them is it's about the perception that people can have and how we try and present a positive image, but that's not always the case. It's the first line. There's a vulture perching right off screen. Well, the screen is what we portray, but right off screen, vultures are not really dangerous because they just eat dead things. Carrion, they call it. But it is a darker omen. So the darker omen is off screen. It's not part of that public image. But otherwise, it just seems kind of slapped together because it's not a narrative. It's not a story that's being told to me, and it's not giving me directions or anything like that as the listener. So on one listen, no idea. I can't even come up with a conspiracy theory about it.
Again, I listened to it several times. I still don't know what it means. So admittedly, very ambiguous. And that's, that can be good or bad. What you heard was maybe more of a negative message. What I heard was a little bit more of a supportive message. And so I appreciated it appeal-wise, maybe a little bit more for that reason.
The other rationale, I think it's an okay melody. I have no issue with it, but I don't think it warrants like a full point. So I rated that at a 0.7 out of 1. The rhythm, I didn't really think there was that much special. It's not a top tier rhythm in the way that Wrong Way or Color Cafe or Sir Duke were. Again, on a single listen, harmony is the hardest one for me to evaluate fairly, but I didn't hear anything in the harmony that really shouted to me, this is a complex arrangement. So that's why I landed at a 2.9 for the composition.
How'd you feel about the performance and production? You said the performance, I think we got the same score for performance. But as far as production goes, you took off some points. How did you feel about that?
Okay, so for both performance and production, usually in a professionally recorded and produced track like this, I would rate 1.0 out of 1.2 for each of those sections, unless it's really good and something really stands out, or if I think there's something that should change. And really the only thing I would change from that is in the production, it's in the arrangement, and it's the way at the end there's guitar feedback in the left channel that goes on for way too long, and then it switches over to a different guitar in the right channel to just kind of stab the song out. It feels sloppy. It feels amateurish because it's absolutely the kind of thing that I used to do when I was recording my guitars, and I thought it sounded cool. But I've outgrown it. I don't think it sounds clean. I think that's a poor production decision for most genres of music. This seems, I don't want to use this word because I'm afraid it has a negative connotation, but it seems kind of emo, and I'm basing that more on the vocal delivery than on the instrumentation. It's not something that appeals to me. So that's the other thing. The appeal, I rated it a 2.3 out of 3.6. I get that there is some emotionality that I could get on repeat listens, and then 3/4 credit on repeat listenability. I think it's not an offensive song. It doesn't offend my sensibilities, but I don't think this is a standout track by any stretch.
Right on. And your final tune score was 7.1, and mine was 8.1. So maybe we should meet there in the middle, find a happy medium. Think that would be appropriate. Maybe it appealed to me a little bit more than it appealed to you, for sure. So there's like 0.6 of a point right there, I think, between our scores out of the 10. So really minimal notes otherwise, as far as composition and production. But the performance, we agree, is pretty great, or at least standard and good enough. And I don't disagree with you on those points. Maybe I just, it spoke to me more than it did to you.
And that's fine. That's why the appeal section is there. It is much more subjective. So do you want to change your official sound appraiser tune score for Substitutions by Silversun Pickups? Do you want to change that to a 7.6?
I say we meet in the middle. Again, it's the tune score. We both reviewed it. If we meet in the middle, that's our new tune score for both of us. I think that's fair.
All right. So there you have it. That was Silversun Pickups earning a 7.6 on the tune score scale. Now, the song that Alexa directed me to on the indie playlist for YouTube Roulette was Someone You Loved by Louis Capaldi. Someone You Loved is a piano ballad that's really a showcase for Louis Capaldi's vocals. You might call it fair trade organic based on the austere arrangement. I read somewhere that someone had been credited with strings on the production, but the only strings I could hear were the heartstrings being pulled. The lead melody, as it's sung, is incredibly emotional, and I suspect it's because it's harmonized by a pretty standard 1-5-6-4 progression for everything except the bridge. And what's sort of unique about it is that the 5 chord is lower than the 1, which is a small change that yields slightly bigger results. The rhythm is a steady pulse that Kevin might describe as like a heartbeat or something. The thing I really like about the lyrics is that there is a very strong structure to each section, but small changes within that structure, so it's not just a straight repeat each time. I really like the lyric, "Now the day bleeds into nightfall," that opens the chorus. It's descriptive in a way that piques the imagination, but also hints at a darker intent or interpretation of why that narrator has lost the person he's singing to. The performance that was captured for this version is a little raw. There are a few words that are hard to make out, like pain at the end of the first verse, but the emotionality that Lewis puts into his singing makes you believe every word, even if you can't quite understand them. The mix is pretty straight ahead, as is the arrangement. Sometimes there's an urge to add complexity to a track when it doesn't really need it. This is an example of well-timed restraint on the part of the production team. As a fair trade organic piano ballad, there's little innovation to be found in Someone You Loved. When I first listened to it, I thought it sounded familiar, like I'd heard it hundreds of times before, even though I seldom go for such stripped-down acoustic balladry. On that first listen, I also thought it was a very archetypical song of lost love, a breakup song. But after spending an hour or two with it, and perhaps regrettably reading some YouTube comments, I'm wondering if it's deeper than just a failed romantic coupling. The narrative is hazy to the listener because it's directed by the narrator toward the lost lover, or lost friend, or sibling, or even an empathetic public figure or hero. It's someone who knows the narrator and understands every line immediately upon delivery. We are just outside observers. Due to the combination of the raw, intense emotionality of the song and its personalizable impact on the listener, Someone You Loved is not an everyday listen, but it might be just what the doctor ordered every once in a while. I rated Someone You Loved by Louis Capaldi at 7.6 out of 10 on the TuneScore scale. But as always, Kev, I would love your input, so why don't you slap on your headphones and give it a listen.
All right. I'm on needles and pins here. I'm back.
So, Kev, what'd you think?
I love it. So I probably differ with you on your TuneScore just a little bit, but most of that's going to be in the appeal section, so I'll let that stand. I think the only things I would give that song more credit for, I think, would be a little bit, I could hear some harmony in there with the changes in the song. I heard some things come in at just the right time, and for whatever reason it stood out with the vocal performance, and it kind of enriched the vocal performance. So I'd say maybe a little bit higher than that, but not very much. And then the performance I thought was excellent. So those are the only two differences. But I'll let your TuneScore stand, of course, because again, most of our differences are going to be in the appeal section. I just kind of liked it more.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, so we just landed a few moments ago on the song that you initially had reviewed, the Silversun pickup song. We landed on doing a composite, and we found that one to be a 7.6 rating. This one, I rated it a 7.6 on its own. I stand by my rating, certainly for the more objective points of it. Having a pretty basic 4-chord loop, the rhythm is just a steady pulse. There's not a lot of interesting or exciting things going on. But that said, even at a 7.6, I think it's a very good song. I think it is really well performed. And I can absolutely see that this could be among the favorites for certain people. It just doesn't happen to appeal as much to me. I would listen to it, but I wouldn't probably seek it out unless I was just in the perfect headspace for it. And that headspace is sort of a strange thing because, like I said, that first time I listened to it, I'm thinking straight ahead breakup song. But after reading a lot of the YouTube comments on the video for it and on just the audio only version on YouTube for it, what I found were a lot of people who identified with this after having lost someone, especially to suicide. I think it resonates more for certain people, and maybe some of it is based on their own external and internal factors.
I would say that the ambiguity in the writing helps a little bit too with that. And you'll find that anytime you have ambiguity in your lyrics, people are going to take it to mean one thing or another. And it really doesn't have to mean any one particular thing. So depending on who you are and what you've gone through, you're going to have a different, it's going to have a different impact emotionally to you. And you're going to have a different understanding of the lyrics.
Right. And that's actually something that we talked about in a recent episode where we were discussing Nickelback and Justin Bieber, a couple of those songs. And we talked about how appealing to the lowest common denominator can give you broad or mass appeal because it allows listeners to personalize the song and imagine scenes from their own lives taking place with that song as the soundtrack. We like that sometimes. We also can sometimes swing the other way and really appreciate authenticity and very deep introspection that we get from, some others that we've discussed fairly recently, like Tyler Childers. It may have been heavily autobiographical, but even if it wasn't, it was believable. And it was a lot of concrete imagery. It's easy to picture.
Very straightforward, that song. No misgivings about what that song was about.
It does exactly what it says on the tin, as they would say in England, or possibly other places. I don't know the genesis of that phrase. I probably shouldn't have used it. But as always, we invite and encourage you, our handsome audience, to give a listen to the tracks we reviewed today. They're on our Tune Scored Tracks playlist on our YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of our scores and critiques. Did you agree? Did we miss anything? Are there better songs that we didn't discuss but would have fit our theme of the indie genre? Or maybe even, is there a YouTube genre playlist that you'd like us to play YouTube Roulette with in an upcoming episode? And if you're an up-and-coming songwriter, that's also a great place to recommend one of your songs to be tune scored. We've had a lot of fun today, and we hope you did too. That's been Kevin Nebrich. I've been Cary Nightingale. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay sound.